And joining us now is my good friend Kevin Billings. He is a former Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Environment and Installations, who is now the CEO of Legation Strategies. It's a consultancy here in Washington, D.C. He is also an honorary group captain in the Royal Air Force's 601 Squadron that serves as an interdisciplinary team of advisors for the Chief of Staff of the Royal Air Force, Air Chief Marshal Sir Rich Knighton. Kevin also has the distinction of leading up one of the RAF's top priorities, the Global Air Force's climate change collaboration. But today he's joining us in his capacity as the driving force behind the Billy Fiske Memorial unveiled on Tuesday on the grounds of the new U.S. Embassy in London. Kevin, thanks so very much for joining us, and congratulations. You've been involved in this entire operation from day one, and it just warm congratulations for finally having executed something that was not easy, but ultimately will be very worthwhile.
Thank you, Vago. It was a great day yesterday. It had been 8 years in the making, and it was appropriately on Billy Fiske's birthday. It would have been his 113th birthday. So that was a fabulous day to do it. We had folks from every part of the Billy Fiske legacy at the embassy. The honor guard from RAF Lakenheath was absolutely fabulous, and it was absolutely a great day. And Vago, thank you for thinking of it.
It's a pleasure, Kevin. I mean, I know how much of your heart and soul you poured into this. This is an air power program, and any air power advocate knows the special place the Royal Air Force holds in history as the first independent air arm, and its role as a true air power pioneer. And one of the most astonishing campaigns was its singular role in the Battle of Britain to defend the nation in what was a heroic and pretty close-run battle that involved also many foreigners who went to Britain to help defend democracy against fascism. Tell the audience a little bit, for those who don't know, who was Billy Fiske and what made him so special?
Billy Fiske was a remarkable young man even before he joined the Royal Air Force. He was the first Olympic gold medalist in the bobsleigh for the United States at 16 in the 1928 Olympics in St. Moritz. And he's also carried the flag in the 1932 Olympics for the United States in Lake Placid and won a gold medal there. He was the son of a wealthy banker and went into banking himself. He went to Trinity Hall College at Oxford and graduated there in 1928, was working for Dillon Read in London, and was brought back to the United States in the end of 1938. When the war broke out in 1939, Billy Fiske left his job on Wall Street and pretended to be a Canadian to come over and fight with his friends. He was friends with William Rhodes Morehouse, famous RAF pilot in 601 Squadron, and came over to be with his friends. He wrote a letter to his sister saying that the Brits have been real good to me in good times, and I have to be with them in bad times. I'd feel horrible just sitting here making money. That was the inspiration, just as a friendship and the fight for liberty. Billy Fiske was slated to be the captain of the USA bobsleigh team at the 1936 Olympics in Garmisch and refused to go to the Olympics. He basically said, I'm not going to be part of Hitler's propaganda machine, and instead went to Colorado, bought a small mining town called Aspen, and built the first ski lift at Aspen and the first ski lodge there in 1936. And then when he got done doing that, he went to St. Moritz and broke the world record in the Cresta run. The guy is absolutely amazing.
Okay, that's a good history, but why is he remembered today, and specifically in the context of the U.S.-British relationship?
Well, he's remembered today because he was the first American to come over before America got into the war, and he gave the full measure of his life in the Battle of Britain. He was hit on August 16th over the Channel. He had just run a Junker into a balloon barrage and was hit by return fire. His Hawker Hurricane was on fire. He could have ditched it in the Channel, but it was imperative, especially at that time, that pilots, if they could do anything they could to recover their airplane, did that. And so he recovered it with a wheels up landing on fire, and ended up dying the next day of his burns. But in 4 days, his plane was back in the air. Billy Fiske not only was an American celebrity and personality who came over, he gave his life. And there's a plaque in St. Paul's Cathedral right adjacent to Nelson's crypt that says, Billy Fiske, an American citizen who died so England could live. And there's RAF wings below that plaque in St. Paul's Cathedral. He means a great deal to this special relationship.
And anybody who's been down there knows how important, especially if they know who Billy Fiske is and how important it is. And actually, I'm sure there are Americans who see that and don't know who it is. And thankfully, they have supercomputers in their pockets to sort of be like, hey, who is this Billy Fiske guy who really was just an impressive figure? And as you said, the story is incredible. And that's one of the reasons why 8 years ago, Kevin, you committed yourself to the task of establishing this monument so that this great American and this very tangible link of the special relationship was honored. What did it take to plan, design, build, and then execute a monument at the U.S. Embassy in London, right? There were more than a couple of permissions required in this evolution.
Vago, it was quite a journey. And when I spoke yesterday, I talked, the fact that we had 3 presidents, 2 monarchs, and a worldwide pandemic that we lasted through. And it really is a tribute to everybody who played a part in this, from our good friend Blythe Crawford, who I was out with at the Admiralty Pub one night and when we came up with the idea, and then General Goldfein and Sir Stephen Hillier agreeing to write a letter to Ambassador Barzin saying that they thought there should be a statue of Billy Fiske at the new embassy, which was just breaking ground at that time. And then, Admiral Stavridis, who did an introduction for me to Ambassador Barzin, who just embraced this thoroughly. And then we had our meeting with Ambassador Barzin, and Blythe brought along Lord Beaverbrook, the grandson of the head of production in World War II. And Lord Beaverbrook's son was Max Aiken, who was the officer commanding of 601 Squadron when Billy Fiske finished flight school. And Beaverbrook brought with him the 3-page handwritten letter that Billy Fiske wrote to his father, Max Aikens, requesting to join 601 Squadron in that initial meeting. And Ambassador Barzin said, well, this was December of 2016. He goes, well, if I were still going to be ambassador, this would happen tomorrow, but it's going to be a long road. And he didn't know how prophetic that would be. But Ambassador Barzin gave some remarks yesterday, and he talked about being the lead runner in the diplomatic relay team that made this happen, because Ambassador Johnson was equally as enthusiastic about this, and Ambassador Hartley, helped put it over the line. One of the most, I think, important, but sometimes a little bit difficult bureaucracy to deal with is the Bureau of Overseas Buildings Operations, because they have so many rules. There's so many things going on there. And we had originally been hoping to have a life-size or larger statue outside the embassy. And for force protection reasons and things, there are no statues outside the embassy. And then we were looking at parks around the embassy. We were dealing with the Wandsworth Council. We were dealing with the people who own the land around the embassy. And it just became a really hard process. And about 2 years ago, the curator at the embassy, named Lester Oram, asked the most pertinent question to us. He says, does it need to be an 8-foot statue? And we said, no. And he said, I've got a vision for this, because I want to do something for Billy Fiske because he means so much to the special relationship. I'm going to propose to the Bureau of Overseas Buildings that the statue of Billy Fiske be put outside the Office of Defense Cooperation in the building, and it'd be part of a hallway that I'm curating right now. And I don't know if anybody's been on the 7th floor of the embassy in London, but when you come out of the elevator and you turn right, there is a large bronze of Abraham Lincoln, in the pose in the Lincoln Memorial. And Lester's vision was that the other bookend of that hallway would be Billy Fiske by the door of the Office of Defense Cooperation. And what an appropriate and fitting place for Billy Fiske to be. And that put it across the line. And then the next part was raising the money, commissioning the artist. Jenna Gehring has done some amazing work, and the statue of Billy Fiske is fabulous. And we got that done, and I was able to reconnect with Ambassador Barzin, who became a large financial contributor to the statue and is an amazing Anglophile. He spoke yesterday via conference call, and he hit it on the head. He said, the one thing that we look to and we've sort of lost the art of is both standing out and fitting in. And he talked about how Billy Fiske stood out as a great athlete and as a great pilot, but fit into the RAF and to 601 Squadron, in the fight against fascism. And he gave the full measure of his life there. And the way the statue came about, it was actually part of that. It was standing out and fitting in. And I can't thank Ambassador Barzin enough for his really wonderful words yesterday.
Finally, Kevin, we see with the onset of the 80th anniversary of D-Day, American veterans coming back and being very warmly received by the French. Do today's British people know this story and appreciate the contributions that Billy and other Americans made at the beginning of the war?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that is quite remarkable. More people over here know who Billy Fiske is in the UK than they do in the United States. He is part and parcel of the few who Churchill talked about in the Battle of Britain, and he's remembered fondly. One of the things that, as we've been working with different folks, as I said, he had graduated from Trinity Hall. We are going to be establishing a centenary scholarship, a Billy Fiske scholarship for an American to go to Trinity Hall, and we're working with them right now on that. There were pieces of the legacy of Billy Fiske everywhere you looked in the embassy yesterday. There were members of 601 Squadron. There was Lord Beaverbrook himself, the third Lord Beaverbrook. Billy Fiske was a crested champion. We had the royalty of the San Moritz Tobogganing Club at the embassy. We had folks from Trinity Hall. We had bankers from what was at one point Dylan Reed. And one of my colleagues was in St. Paul's, and the official tour that they take through St. Paul's, every tour stops at the plaque of Billy Fiske, and they talk about Billy Fiske and the sacrifice he made for the special relationship.
Kevin, thanks so very much again for joining us. Congratulations again for the achievement of commemorating a great American who played an important part in a great cause. And as you said, paid the ultimate price for his principled stance and also his role as an athlete and an innovator. Anybody who goes out on a ski slope, especially in Aspen, give a hearty thank you to Billy Fiske. Thanks so very much again for joining us. And Kevin, thank you in advance for joining us. I know that you and I are going to have an opportunity to talk in London when we're over to cover both the Royal Air Force's Global Air and Space Chiefs Conference, which is a terrific event. We're going to cover the Royal International Air Tattoo, as well as the Farnborough International Air Show. So looking forward to seeing you across all three of those great British events in which there is a very powerful Royal Air Force flavor. So go Air Power, go RAF, and thanks so very much for joining us.
Vago, thank you so much. And I can't stress this enough. This wasn't about me. There were so many people who made this happen. I just sort of happened to hang on to the sled long enough to get it to the end.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Air Power Podcast. And if you liked what you heard, hey, tell a friend, unless you think it would give them a competitive advantage. Thanks also to GE Aerospace for powering the entire flight. We'll be back next week.